let's pay homage to Black History Month. What's the ultimate universal comfort food? If you answered fried chicken, then you are correct. Don't go around telling me it's something else like hamburgers or Totino's pizza rolls. I'm telling you, you're wrong. Fried chicken is a dish that made its way through multiple different cultures and backgrounds. But the sad part is, it comes from dreadful upbringings. The topic of fried chicken is actually the beginning of where I got the idea to make this YouTube channel. Here's me when I was about 15 pounds lighter and I mentioned it in my very first video. And this clip from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah is the inspiration that got me thinking about it. Listening to that clip with David Chang meant so much to me. The reason is because in this day and age where we have all different types of technology to make humans smarter, people still choose to use their technology to learn how to do this instead. There needed to be a dynamic change, and I knew that my love for food and Asian American history could be a catalyst for that change. To go from understanding that this comes from this. My first thought when I was drawing up the idea for this channel was, where did fried chicken come from? Oh yeah, that's where it came from. My second thought was, come to think of it, there's a lot of food dishes out there that have actually come from a struggle of some sort. And it's true, many of the foods that we enjoy now come from foul backgrounds, whether it be coming from socioeconomic disparity, ethnic marginalization, theological exclusion, and more. Fried chicken has one of the worst struggles in its historical context, coming from racial discrimination and atrocious roots of the enslaved people that introduced it to the world. I say this because the origins and popularity are linked to black culture until it was stolen and plagiarized by the enslavers. Now I just want everyone to know that the technique of frying chicken did come from Scotland, but it made its way to West Africa by trade in the 1600s. Fried chicken became a staple in West African cuisine as they were the ones that gave it the seasoning and the technique of cooking it in palm oil. But eventually that culture was carried to America through slave ships. In the Deep South, where slavery was very prominent, the concept of the dish was foreign, because there was no palm oil or any other ingredients for that matter that were readily available to them. In fact, in order for the enslaved people to retain their history of the dish, they had to look through other means to maintaining their nutrients. This meant finding their own spices from working the plantations. This meant rummaging through trash and frying it with wasted pig fat. This meant heavily focusing on farming chickens because it was the only source of proteins that enslavers allowed their captives to keep. But as ingredients became more accessible in the 1800s, fried chicken had become a common dish in Southern cooking, and it was able to survive past abolition. It had become such a popular dish in the South that the farming industry took off very well to meet its demand. Unfortunately, many things hinder the African American community from claiming the dish and having it be recognized as a food that comes from their roots. Some of those things were inflated prices of chicken, Jim Crow laws, the rise of fast food chains such as KFC and Popeyes. With the rise in popularity, inflation made it nearly impossible for black people to afford chickens. White people gentrified fried chicken and glorified it, causing it to be seen as a rich person's kind of food. If black people didn't have the resources to farm their own chicken, they could try buying it from the restaurant. But with Jim Crow laws enacted at the time, it was hard enough for black people to get seated in a segregated restaurant. Either the restaurants would serve them food, but it'd be a rarity, or the white business owners would simply just shun them away. The last thing I mentioned about the difficulty of black people claiming the dish is the rise of fast food chains. You see, KFC is known in history textbooks to be the first successful fried chicken fast food chain. But what they won't tell you in these textbooks is that Colonel Sanders actually stole this recipe from his black servant named Mrs. Childress. And of course they redact this information, because textbooks back then wanted to revere white people as powerful figures to represent their side of history. And since then, the origins of fried chicken was carried through the face of this white man, and it's never truly given original credit to the real person that made those 11 herbs and spices. Now I know that some people might say that this debate can't be proven because there's no evidence that Sanders stole from Childress, but what seems more realistic to assume is the erasure of any evidence to oppress black people and to further appropriate and exploit from their culture. And that's why you see the title of this video being Mrs. Childress's Real Kentucky Fried Chicken, because today we're paying homage to food culture, so I'm gonna pay homage to the sole creator of it. Let's go make it now. The first step in making the mise en place is gathering our spices. And here's what we're using. 2/3 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of thyme, half a teaspoon of basil, half a teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of celery salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 4 teaspoons of paprika, 2 teaspoons of garlic salt, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, 2 cups of flour, and 1 teaspoon of mustard. Keep in mind that this recipe comes from a leaked photo of a former KFC employee, and the original recipe does call for dried mustard, but all I had was yellow mustard, so I'll just be using that as a substitute for it. Of course, we'll need some eggs and the chicken of your choice. I personally like drumsticks. Wings are cool too, but I don't want to say anything to compare them because I don't want to strike a debate between which cut is better. Okay, so now that we have all the ingredients ready, let's start mixing the dry ingredients. In a bowl, just whisk around the flour and the spices together very well. In a separate bowl, just add flour. I saw this technique from another cooking YouTuber named Kang Tran, and he uses this flour as the first coating of the chicken. The last thing to prepare is the egg wash. Simply whisk around 3 eggs and then we'll mix that together with our mustard. And here's what the breading process looks like step by step. First, take your chicken and drop it in the flour. Shake off the excess and then drop it in the egg wash. The last step also uses a technique from Kang Tran, and that's to drop it in the seasoned flour and squeeze the mixture onto the chicken to give it a thick layer of breading on the skin. Now they're ready for the fryer. For your oil, preheat it anywhere between 325 to 375 degrees. You don't want to go any hotter than that, otherwise the chicken will burn on the outside and it will cook unevenly on the inside. Gently drop them in there and set a timer for about 12 to 15 minutes. When the timer is done, it should look a little something like this. And that's the dish, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. I want to remind everyone to please support your Black-owned businesses regularly. Continue to pay homage to Black History Month. And as always, stay hungry, fam.